The streets are no longer alive with crowds. They are filled with the unemployed, drowning in debt. Hospitals are packed with stroke and heart attack patients. What's going on? Do you realize how terrifying this economy has become? I don't even dare to call my friends or relatives anymore. Every conversation is like opening a floodgate of despair. I thought my life was miserable enough, but their stories are worse, more hopeless, more suffocating. The more we talk, the heavier the darkness becomes. Look around. Businesses are shutting down everywhere. Entire industries collapsing. Something that sold for 5 yuan just days ago now goes for 3.5. Linyi, once the proud logistics capital of China, has turned into a ghost town. Trucks that once carried fortunes now sit idle, and job seekers like me send out resumes that are never even opened. Savings are gone, and many of us don't even dare to go home for the new year. Migrant workers suffer too. They labor all year, yet when school starts, they can't send a single penny to their children. The police show up, but nothing changes. Big hotels are forced to sell braised meat on the streets. Apartments stand empty as people pack up and leave. Even universities with tens of thousands of students are drowning in billions of yuan in debt, their accounts frozen by courts. Restaurants are empty. Shopping malls echo with silence. Street markets vanish. Houses don't sell, and cars can't find buyers no matter how cheap. From textile mills to plating factories, every boss repeats the same words. This is the worst year for business in decades. Shanghai tells the same story. I spoke to a man unemployed for more than 4 months, unable to find work. Once, people earned 80,000 to 100,000 yuan a month in high-paying industries. Now they beg for 20,000 or even 10,000. A Didi driver from Hunan told me he barely survives, drowning in rent, expenses, and fines. For ordinary people, survival itself has become the only dream. Factories are collapsing, one after another. Machines worth millions sit idle, gathering dust. Foreign investors pull out, and Chinese manufacturing is left abandoned. Even fresh graduates with degrees in accounting can't find jobs that pay 3,000 yuan. Families spend hundreds of thousands on education, only to see their children return to selling goods on the street. This is the reality. 9 out of 10 jobs have no future. Nearly 500 million people are lying flat, drifting through life with no hope. Experts warn of unrest, and whispers of rebellion spread through the streets. This is not a slowdown. This is collapse, and it is swallowing an entire generation. And if there really is a future, it's no longer for ordinary people like us. These days, just finding a job that pays on time is already considered a blessing. First, you fight to survive, to keep your rice bowl before even daring to think about change. The e-commerce industry is collapsing, and I'm about to lose my job again. I came in today. Let me show you how miserable things are. Look at this, a giant office, pitch black, not a single person left. Just 2 weeks ago, this place was bustling. Every day, someone helped me set up the live stream, turn on the lights, boot up the computer. Now I do everything myself because the company has gone bankrupt. Everyone else was laid off. Only I remain. This is the reality of China's economy, tragic beyond words. Step outside and the scene is just as grim. At 7:30 p.m., Lingi restaurant is still hawking food at roadside stalls. At 7:32, Ping Hengzhou restaurant is doing the same. By 7:35, even Ronghua Hotel has joined in. Its grand halls dark, staff reduced to street vendors. My God, how bad must things be if a hotel is forced to sell food like this? Tourism isn't spared either. Friends in Zhangjiajie tell me the whole scenic area feels like the off-season, even during peak months. Tianmen Mountain, the pride of Zhangjiajie, is practically empty, even with free admission for seniors and children. Over by Jiangze Lake, rows of idle tourist buses sit useless. No matter how hard they try, operators can't make a single yuan. China's economy is sliding into darkness. Entire industries are suffocating. Brick and mortar stores close one after another. Waves of unemployment wash thousands into the streets. Mr. Zhao, a resident of Shenyang, says train station squares in major cities are now filled with young people sleeping rough. Across Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou and Shenzhen, videos show graduates huddled under bridges, in parks, at bus stations, desperate, abandoned, invisible. The cries of misery echo across the nation. 3 years of zero COVID lockdowns shattered exports, investment, and consumption. Tens of millions of jobs vanished. Add to that the U.S.-China trade war and the mass exodus of companies abroad, and youth unemployment has exploded. Hello, everyone, one graduate says. I just returned from Hangzhou yesterday. The job market is brutal. Thousands of resumes get sent out, but 80% never get a reply. Most are just marked as read. Actual interview invitations are rare. Hangzhou is supposed to be the heart of e-commerce, but even applying for basic operations roles, there's nothing. Every day I refresh my phone, waiting for a message that never comes. If you're heading there to find work, prepare yourself. It will break you. My best friend is still holding on in Hangzhou. I pray she gets a job soon. As for me, I had to leave. There's no work left. The population is shrinking. Real estate has collapsed. Factories close earlier every year. This year, some shut down in August, months before Lunar New Year. How are people supposed to live? Factories/wages/jobs. One worker now does the job of three. Just next door, they laid off 40 of 100 workers. Everyone left works themselves to the bone just to avoid being next. But no matter how much effort you give, the company doesn't change. Work is getting harder, and hope is vanishing. In the countryside, farmers suffer the same fate. 6 yuan for 20 jin, that's 30 cents a pound. Is there any profit left? A vendor says. No, only losses. Scallions, 40 cents. Everything is sold at a loss. They smile bitterly, but their voices tremble with despair. Small businesses are collapsing under the pressure. Today is my last day, says one shop owner. Foreign trade is dead, domestic consumption has crashed, and ordinary people have no money left to spend. Who suffers in the end? Us. Layoffs, pay cuts, debts piling higher and higher. If we can't find a way out, all these factories will eventually close. Even Tianjin, once a hub of vitality, is fading. Reports show flights costing just over 100 yuan, yet no passengers. High-speed train carriages run empty. On Binjiang Road, the busiest street in Tianjin, you can now buy a full fast food meal for just 10 yuan. Think about it. This is how far the economy has fallen. Factories and businesses are collapsing one after another in China's major cities. Once bustling industrial zones now stand silent, filled with abandoned equipment and empty workshops. Unemployment has soared to levels unseen in decades, leaving millions with no steady income. Bankruptcies spread like wildfire, consuming both small shops and once mighty corporations. For countless families, savings are gone, debts are piling up, and there is no relief in sight. The crisis has left people trapped in despair with no path forward. Across the nation, the social fabric is unraveling under economic pressure. Young people graduate into a job market that has nothing to offer, while middle-aged workers are cast aside without severance. The promise of prosperity has turned into a nightmare of survival. Even those still employed fear layoffs and unpaid wages at any moment. With no trust in the government and no safety net to rely on, ordinary citizens are left clinging to hopelessness. In this storm of collapse, the people see no anchor to hold on to. The Chinese Communist Party's misguided policies are driving the economy toward collapse. Financial resources are drying up, and local government debt has reached astronomical levels. The job market is bleak, and ordinary people see no way to survive. Li Yu, a high school student, said with grief, "Recently, suicides have been increasing. Every time I read such news, I want to cry. People say life is hard, but how many truly see the real source of suffering? Workers are not even allowed to demand unpaid wages. Rights, freedom, and democracy, these words have even become negative terms in this land. Whenever you mention them, the authorities point fingers abroad, or even at their own people, but never at the real source of suffering, the evil ruling party." 20 years, China poured hundreds of billions into Africa, building roads across deserts, industrial parks and wastelands, and even buying land as if it were their empire's backyard. But today, that image of prosperity is collapsing. In July 2025, Chinese social media was shaken by videos from Angola. Not peaceful protests, but mobs storming Chinese neighborhoods. Doors were smashed, shops looted in daylight, crowds shouting with nothing left to lose. Once protected compounds with guards and private restaurants could no longer hold back the anger. Within seconds, stores were stripped bare. In Kenya, fear struck immediately. A Chinese trader recalled how their bus was stopped after leaving the airport, tires slashed and crowds closing in. "We were terrified," he said. This wasn't a land of opportunity anymore. It was pure rage. In Luanda, the phrase zero-cost shopping spread, a grim term for Chinese-owned shops looted without protection. Merchants lost everything, praying only to survive. When Angola hiked fuel prices by 33% on August 1st, taxi drivers went on strike and protests spread like wildfire. Barricades went up, supply chains froze, and anger turned toward Chinese businesses. Factories burned, supermarkets smashed. Behind shuttered doors, Chinese families reinforced roller gates with barbed wire and hired armed guards. But resentment only grew. Protesters demanded local workers be expelled from Chinese-owned shops to cut off the arms and legs of their bosses. The message was clear. It was no longer just about economics, but survival. This fury had been building for 2 decades. The gap between wealthy Chinese enclaves and struggling locals grew too obvious. Air-conditioned offices and private guards on one side, daily hardship on the other. When the fuel hike came, it lit a fire no one could stop. Chinese businesses froze in major cities like Luanda, Huambo, and Lobito. Shops stayed dark, workers were sent home, and fear took over. And the unrest didn't stop at Angola. In Zambia, tragedy struck. Ms. Xu, a former broadcaster from Hunan, who had built a farm and lived simply among locals, suddenly disappeared in early August. Just days before, she was happily sharing harvest photos online. Then everything went silent. Friends later found her home abandoned, her animals left unattended, and weeks later authorities confirmed the worst news. The suspect? Shockingly, it was her own farm manager. He vanished with her car, passport, and belongings, leaving behind unanswered questions and a trail of anger. Even more chilling was the police warning this was not an isolated case. In 2025 alone, several incidents involving Chinese nationals pointed to the same pattern. Trusted employees, from guards to drivers to housekeepers, turning against their employers. Resentment over layoffs and pay cuts simmered quietly until it erupted into betrayal and violence. Security experts began to sound the alarm. Many Chinese businesses in Africa had built fences and hired guards, but neglected the people inside. Low wages, no background checks, no trust building. They locked their warehouses, but the real danger already held the keys. Then came Mali, the next flashpoint. Billions poured into mines, but instead of protests, armed groups appeared. On June 1st, extremists stormed a cement plant in western Mali. Buildings burned, 1 Chinese engineer and 3 Indians were kidnapped. Days later, another mining site was torched. Trucks destroyed, offices in flames. The attackers did not steal. They left one message: leave. On June 20th, the Chinese embassy issued an unprecedented order. All companies must withdraw from high-risk areas. It wasn't just a warning, it was an admission that control was lost. For Chinese workers on the ground, the change was stark. "A Chinese passport used to be a shield," one businessman in Bamako said. "Now I hide it under my shirt." Another admitted, "I pretend to be Korean or Japanese." Nationality here has become a liability. At border checkpoints, they faced special processing fees with no receipts. Locals called it a body tax, the price of privilege. From Angola to Zambia to Mali, the pattern was the same. Not nationalism, but fury. Anger at years of promises that felt one-sided. China entered Africa under the slogan of win-win, but many locals now say they only see one side winning. On Chinese social media, the reaction split. One side burned with anger. "We built roads, schools, jobs. Why are we treated this way?" The other asked sharper questions. Did those projects truly help ordinary people, or only enrich elites? Did anyone care how locals actually lived? This is no longer just about broken contracts or burned factories. It is about broken trust. Across Africa, fear in Chinese communities is shifting from profit loss to survival itself, whether shops will be looted, whether staff will betray them, whether tomorrow they can still stay. Some quietly book flights home. Others, tied down by factories and property, remain trapped between danger and retreat. Their greatest mistake? Copying China's cost-driven model: cheap labor, little respect, no bonds. That neglect is now turning workers into their biggest threat. As one business owner admitted, if they hate what you represent, no one escapes. China, as the world's second largest power, could have been a true partner, listening, sharing, helping others grow. Instead, what many locals saw were one-sided contracts, debt, and control. From looted shops in Angola to collapsed projects abroad, one truth is becoming clear. When development feels like a facade, people will no longer stay silent. The flames of protest will not die out. They will spread. At the start of 2025, Indonesia was rocked by turmoil. On May 13th, over 100,000 protesters filled the streets of Pati, Central Java, demanding the resignation of Regent Sudegu over accusations of arrogance and failed leadership. The Pati People's Solidarity Alliance put forward 5 demands, from protecting ancient mosques to opposing wasteful projects and controversial school reforms. When Degu appeared, tempers flared. Demonstrators clashed with police, smoke filled the air, and government vehicles were damaged. Dozens were hurt, several detained, but Degu refused to step down. The regional council began an inquiry, while thousands vowed to keep the pressure on. Just days earlier, another storm had erupted in Sulawesi. The Morowali Industrial Park, the world's largest nickel hub, backed by Chinese investment, saw angry crowds surge through its gates. Warehouses, offices, and vehicles were damaged as workers protested what they saw as discrimination and abuse of power. Production lines froze. Police locked down the entire area, and Indonesia's role in the global nickel supply chain hung in the balance. Morowali was no ordinary site, a joint venture between Indonesia's Bintang Mining and China's Tsingshan. It produced over 40% of the world's nickel for EVs and clean energy. Any disruption threatened a global domino effect. Beneath it all, resentment grew. Locals earned a fraction of Chinese workers' salaries, while the best jobs stayed out of reach. Anger escalated into petitions, with even 328 retired generals demanding change. Jakarta faced a painful choice: protect Chinese firms and risk unrest, or side with the people and lose tens of billions in investment. As Morowali simmered, strikes spread nationwide. A wage dispute at a shoe factory left over 1,000 suddenly jobless. On social media, workers poured out frustration. 9 years of loyalty, and now nothing. Then came the biggest blow. Steck Group, a textile giant with 6 decades of history, collapsed on May 1st, laying off 20,000 workers. Silent machines and shuttered gates became symbols of a deeper crisis. The roots ran deeper, cheaper. Automated Chinese factories undercut local industry. The U.S.-China trade war shifted contracts to Vietnam and Thailand. Exports shrank, strikes erupted across Java, Batam, and Bekasi. Families lost homes, children's tuition, even daily meals. Government aid was too little, too late. By mid-May, the crisis turned political. Jakarta froze 127 Chinese projects worth over 1 trillion yuan. Some called it defiance. Others warned it was the breaking point. China's Belt and Road projects, from mining to high-speed rail, were now lightning rods for anger. On social media, hashtags surged, Indonesia for Indonesians. Protests spread across provinces. Banners accused Chinese companies of taking land, jobs, and futures. Tensions rose as international investors began to back away. Japanese, Korean, and European corporations paused expansion. Capital outflows hit the rupiah, and the stock market shuddered. Analysts warned GDP could shrink by 2% within a year if the standoff worsened. President Prabowo was caught in an impossible bind. He needed Chinese capital for his Golden Indonesia 2045 vision, but also leaned on U.S. military ties to balance regional geopolitics. Massive projects worth $58 billion hung in limbo. The Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, once a proud symbol of partnership, was now bleeding over $1 million a day. Power plants, ports, and mines face similar risks. By late May, the nation was trapped. Chinese funds frozen, streets restless, global investors on edge. And as Indonesia struggled, another storm loomed, the slowdown of China itself. Reports from international organizations painted a stark picture. In July 2025, China's industrial output rose only 5.7%, the weakest in 3 years. Retail growth slowed to 3.7%, investment barely moved, and real estate collapsed 11%, dragging its GDP share to historic lows. A faltering China meant an even shakier Indonesia.
From a profound economic downturn to widespread social unrest, from infrastructure disasters to a military might that's merely a facade, China under the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is grappling with a full-blown crisis. The CCP's polished statistics conceal a grim reality. Millions of citizens are mired in poverty, freedoms are stifled, and the foundations of power are crumbling. While the CCP propagates its Chinese dream, a series of shocking incidents expose the rot within. Join us as we uncover the hidden truths from the fall of Hong Kong, once the Pearl of the Orient, to a military that's more paper tiger than powerhouse. These are not isolated stories, but a mosaic of a superpower teetering on the brink of collapse. From the Pearl of the Orient to rubble, Hong Kong's total collapse. Late at night in Hong Kong, 200-meter-long pedestrian tunnels, once bustling with life, now shelter hundreds of homeless people. They huddle in makeshift tents, on worn-out sofas, and among tattered suitcases, some even using barriers to mark their territory. One man carefully places a wooden coffee table with a Bible next to his bed, clinging to a semblance of order amid chaos. This is the tragic portrait of a city that was once Asia's premier financial hub, now sinking into decline after the bursting of its property bubble. Official unemployment hit 3.5% in June 2024, the highest since 2022, with youth unemployment soaring to 6.8%. Yet experts suspect these figures are heavily sanitized, with the reality far bleaker. On social media, residents pessimistically predict a lost decade due to prolonged economic stagnation. The commercial real estate market starkly illustrates this collapse. Retail spaces once valued at tens of millions of Hong Kong dollars now stand empty, plastered with for lease signs offering up to 70% discounts, yet attracting no takers. Landlords lament being cut like leeks, losing millions in a single year. Rental prices have plummeted 60 to 70% since their 2019 peak, turning bustling streets like Canton Road into ghostly, deserted stretches even in daylight. The first half of 2025 saw a wave of small business closures, particularly in retail and dining. According to the Hong Kong Economic Daily, over 290 shops closed or were slated to close by June's end, with 70% in the food sector. Iconic establishments vanished. Superstar Chinese Cuisine, 36 years. Federal Palace, 30 years. Ocean Empire, 33 years. Daniel's Restaurant, 44 years, and Four Seasons Hot Pot since 1990. These closures aren't just economic losses. They erase Hong Kong's cultural heritage. More shockingly, Hong Kong residents are flocking to mainland China for shopping, further bleeding local businesses. Then came the bombshell. McDonald's sold 23 properties worth 3 billion Hong Kong dollars, 384 million US dollars, marking only the third such move in its history, following Japan's 1990 recession and Russia's Ukraine war exit. This signals a complete collapse of confidence in Hong Kong's property market. The office market has also tanked, with transaction prices at 15,800 Hong Kong dollars per square foot, down 70% from 7 years ago. Even tycoon Li Ka-shing is liquidating assets, slashing prices for his Deepwater Bay villa by 23% and abandoning projects in Hong Kong and Beijing. Cheung Kong Holdings' mainland assets dropped from 75% to under 5%, with billions redirected to the UK, Europe, and Southeast Asia. Analysts call this the final signal of evaporated faith in Hong Kong's future. Beneath the economic surface lies political darkness. The CCP's tight grip through the National Security Law and Article 23 has eroded the one country, two systems framework. Between 2020 and 2024, Hong Kong lost 15% of its finance jobs as firms like Goldman Sachs relocated to Singapore or Tokyo. The U.S. revoked Hong Kong's special trade status in 2020, accelerating capital flight. Press freedom rankings plummeted to 140th in 2025, nearing mainland China and North Korea. The image of an elderly woman holding white flowers, surrounded by police, has become a symbol of crushed freedoms. From million-strong protests to today, even silent gestures are criminalized. Hong Kong, once the Pearl of the Orient and Asia's gateway, is now a hollow shadow, with a collapsed property market, vanishing businesses, disillusioned youth, and extinguished freedoms. Tofu Steel Bridge collapses in 3 seconds. Infrastructure disasters. Expose corruption. Hasty construction of miraculous infrastructure has once again led to deadly tragedy in China. The Huanghe-Jianjie Superbridge, hailed as an engineering marvel and a political gift, collapsed in just 3 seconds, sending 16 workers plummeting 130 meters into the Yellow River. This was no accident, but the inevitable outcome of a rotten construction system, riddled with subcontracting layers, cost-cutting, and corrupt bidding that prioritizes deadlines and prestige over human safety. At 3 a.m. on August 22nd, as workers tensioned steel cables to complete the bridge, the main cables snapped, causing a 108-meter steel girder to crash into the river. Footage captured the horrifying moment. Cranes and equipment fell, with 15 workers and 1 supervisor killed or missing. The video showed one side of the bridge intact, the other in ruins with scattered cables. Witnesses described cables on the right snapping, sending steel pipes flying. The 1,600-meter bridge, built by the China Railway Bridge Bureau, was meant to be the world's longest double steel arch bridge spanning the Yellow River. Its towers, over 100 meters tall, were completed in June, with a connection ceremony planned for August 26th. The immediate cause: 4 anchor girders broke into 8 pieces, triggering a domino effect. Experts suspect corroded cables, poor installation, or substandard materials from an opaque bidding system. Launched in 2021 with over 2 billion yuan, US $275 million invested, the project was promoted as a national symbol. But political pressure turned it into a disaster. It was rushed as a gift for the 80th anniversary of Japan's defeat and National Day. Workers toiled at night to avoid temperature fluctuations, but faced intense deadline pressure. A 1-month delay forced overtime with over 100 workers on night shifts since June. Independent analysts noted loose cables before the collapse, with only 4 cables bearing the load instead of 6, a sign of gross negligence. This tragedy isn't isolated, but reflects China's construction model. Political pressure overrides safety, long subcontractor chains, subpar materials, and a web of interests conceal risks. The CCP buries these failures with propaganda, but the collapse is a stark warning of the deadly dangers in its unchecked infrastructure system. Collapsed property market, home buyers in regret, and ghost cities. China's once golden property market is now a nightmare. Home prices have crashed. In Shenzhen, a project fell from 12 million yuan to 4 million in 3 years. A 2021 buyer lost over 2 million, from 3 million to under 1 million. In Chengdu, a family went bankrupt with 3.8 million in debt. Shanghai lost 2.7 million from 5 million. Guangzhou saw 30 months of declines. Oversupply is staggering. High-end properties dropped from 23.55 million to under 7 million. Complexes under 20 years old are already dilapidated, with residents fearing uninhabitability in 30 years. China has over 50 ghost cities. Jiangsu's prices fell 95% from 12,000 square meters to 600. In Wuhan, 40 of 50 homeowners are selling, with no buyers. Lushan dropped from 800,000 to 100,000, with weed-choked residences and dark towers. The sacrificed generation, born 1988 to 1998, bears the brunt. Blogger Xu Hong'an notes oversupply and mortgages turned tragic. In Tianjin, prices fell 50 to 60%. Shenzhen from 60,000 square meters to 35,000. One man, hair turned white from regret, lost his savings. The CCP masks this with rosy data, but the reality is a trap devastating millions of families. Paper tiger, military, brutal training, poor equipment, and politicization. The CCP boasts a mighty military, but it's a paper tiger. The PLA spends heavily but lacks skilled soldiers. Russia's Ukraine failures prove paper strength doesn't win wars. PLA training is brutal. Recruits drop from 72 kilograms to 50 kilograms in 3 months from relentless running and push-ups, leaving many with broken bones or permanent injuries. U.S. training, by contrast, is individualized to avoid harm. Nutrition is poor, steamed buns and sparse meat dishes. The U.S. offers varied meals like burgers and pizza. Logistics are weak. China's Y-20 transport planes number in the dozens, compared to hundreds for the U.S. equipment is subpar. Type 79 armor deforms after gunfire, ammo bags are flimsy, and water bottles lack insulation. Night vision goggles are limited to 2 per team. Officers often hold only high school or associate degrees. Political commissars dominate, prioritizing ideology. 40% of training time is spent on theory, leading to disastrous decisions, as seen in the 1979 Vietnam War. The PLA's outward aggression masks deep flaws hidden by CCP propaganda. Please share your thoughts in the comments. If this content resonates with you, share it with your network. Your support helps us continue delivering independent, high-quality journalism. Subscribe and like to stay updated with China Undercover. Thank you for following.
The streets are teeming with unemployed individuals, overwhelmed by mounting debts that seem impossible to escape. Hospitals across the nation are inundated with patients suffering from strokes, brain hemorrhages, and heart attacks, raising urgent questions about what has gone so terribly wrong. The economic landscape has deteriorated to an alarming degree, casting a shadow of uncertainty over daily life. Once thriving business ventures, even those deemed profitable, are now crumbling under the weight of financial strain. Prices that stood at around 5 yuan just days ago have plummeted to a mere 3 yuan and 50 cents, resulting in staggering losses exceeding 20,000 yuan. Such low prices were unheard of back in 2016, yet here we are, on September 13, 2025, facing a grim reality. The logistics sector, once the pulsating heart of Linyi, the so-called logistics capital, now lies eerily silent, a stark contrast to its former days of bustling activity and constant movement. Job searches have become a relentless struggle, with countless applications submitted through platforms like Boss Zippin and Alipay, alongside efforts to find part-time work and connect with various groups, yet responses remain non-existent, all marked as unread. Financial reserves have dwindled to just over 1,000 yuan, leaving many hesitant to return home this year, the atmosphere thick with despair. Migrant workers endure grueling conditions, toiling without pay as their children's school terms begin, with no assistance forthcoming. From morning to afternoon, the situation persists unresolved, despite multiple police visits that yield no action. Even prestigious hotels have resorted to discounting braised meat, while rows of houses stand abandoned, emptied of residents, with another group departing just this morning. The crisis extends to educational institutions, as evidenced by Dalian Science and Technology College, where staff payments have ceased entirely. This university, home to over 10,000 students, is burdened with a staggering 3.5 billion yuan debt, its accounts frozen by the courts, leaving the whereabouts of those funds a mystery. The anxiety is palpable, with many losing sleep past 2 a.m., grappling with the daily costs of children's tutoring, home and car loans, and the inability to secure stable employment. This year's sense of crisis surpasses last year's, intensified by reports of wholesale markets, once vibrant with water-vegetable trade, seeing 13 or 14 businesses shut down. Even a respected figure like Zhao Jiangxi, known for premium goods, has withdrawn, signaling that neither high-quality nor cheap products can withstand the economic downturn. Many are packing up, returning to their hometowns in defeat. Experts advocate for economic stimulation through consumption, yet restaurants sit empty, malls see no shoppers, markets lack visitors, and houses and cars go unsold despite aggressive promotions. Conversations with suppliers, be it processing factories, gold stamping plants, or embossing workshops, reveal a unanimous lament. This is the worst business year in decades. The unemployment tide swells, particularly felt in Shanghai, where individuals unemployed for over 4 months roam jobless. High-paying industries, once offering 80,000 or 100,000 yuan monthly, now struggle to provide roles paying 20,000 or 30,000 yuan. A Didi driver from Hunan navigating unfamiliar Shanghai roads faces passenger complaints, earning a few thousand yuan monthly while burdened by rent, fees, and fines, planning a move to Chengdu next month. The pressure is suffocating. China's economy continues its relentless decline, affecting every sector. Online closures and unemployment surges are on the rise, with factories halting operations and shops shutting their doors. Once bustling city streets are now lined with closed storefronts, unemployment rampant. Online videos depict a nation where both ordinary citizens and graduating students face joblessness, with some mainland residents noting that this wave has driven many into desperate straits. Experts caution of economic collapse, social unrest, and a lack of livelihood, predicting a surge in civil incidents that could herald a broader uprising. Reports indicate that nearly 90% of young people nationwide are dissatisfied with their job prospects, with nearly half opting to lie flat or abandon hope, feeling life has lost all meaning. Despite technological advancements often highlighted in the news, the average person's life grows increasingly exhausting, less joyful than decades past. In Harbin, life has become unsustainable, jobs scarce and layoffs common, while a 30-year-old internet worker finds themselves optimized out of a job at a 2,700-employee company that once promised stability. This firm, boasting 60 billion yuan in revenue, has laid off staff after 10 months, leaving manufacturing in peril. Investment in factories has dried up, with hundreds of machines standing idle for weeks, large factories exiting the market, and small to medium enterprises collapsing, one after another. These machines, some unused for months or never operational, symbolize a sector on the brink. University graduates, having invested 300,000 yuan and 4 years of study, struggle to find even 3,000 yuan jobs, while new graduates turn to temporary roles like logistics or hospital front desk work out of necessity. The job market offers little hope, with stable employment a rare achievement. At 7:30 p.m., restaurants like Lin Yi and Ping Hung operate as stalls, while Renhua Hotel runs without lights. Tourism in Chang'an Street, even with free entry at Tianmen Mountain, draws few visitors, and tourism buses earn nothing. Shenyang resident Mr. Zhao reports young people sleeping on streets in major city stations and squares, some in despair. In Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, youth linger under bridges and in parks. This unemployment crisis, worsened by 3 years of zero-COVID policies stalling exports, consumption, and investment, erasing 10,000 jobs, combined with U.S.-China trade tensions and corporate relocations, has skyrocketed youth unemployment. The economic collapse, marked by massive local debts and a lack of livelihood, sees rising suicides. With workers denied wage claims and rights, freedom, and democracy vilified, the root blamed on an oppressive system rather than external forces. Many people in China can no longer afford to put food on the table. Ordinary citizens at the bottom of society find their opportunities for survival crushed to the point of near extinction. People are left helpless. By 6:30 in the evening, if one hasn't secured work or income, there is nothing left to do but go home empty-handed. Each day, workers wait in vain for a chance, yet most return with nothing. The economy has deteriorated drastically compared to years past. What is presented today is little more than a facade, a performance of false prosperity. Beneath the bright lights and slogans lies exhaustion and despair. On the streets, delivery workers rush to complete orders, some with young children strapped to their backs. They have no choice. This generation sacrifices itself while uncertain whether the next will fare any better. At 3 in the morning in Shanghai, countless people can be seen sleeping beneath elevated highways and bridges, clustered together with no shelter. Dozens of couriers, stripped of even the dignity of a tent, lay side by side in the open air. The sight is heartbreaking. Rural elders live a starkly different fate. Some dance in city squares to pass their final years, while others in the countryside bend over discarded bottles just to collect enough for a meal. Asked what happens when illness and weakness arrive, one farmer responded, without hesitation, "I'll drink pesticide." Such words cut through the heart like a blade. In crowded elevators and cramped apartments, young people break down under the weight of despair. One 30-year-old, too poor to afford medical care, chose to give up his life after years of suffering. Even the cost of a hospital trip was out of reach. Friends tried to help but soon realized one-time assistance cannot undo systemic hopelessness. When survival itself requires impossible choices, the meaning of life becomes unbearably fragile. Meanwhile, China's broader economy worsens by the day. Real estate has collapsed, companies shut down en masse, foreign capital withdraws rapidly, and unemployment remains at record highs. People cannot find work, cannot buy food, and end up sleeping rough. Yet in this climate of desperation, the government spends lavishly on parades and vanity projects. The most recent military parade is estimated to have cost 36 billion yuan, while Beijing also pledged another 2 billion yuan in unconditional aid to foreign allies. The contradiction has ignited public anger. Stories of suffering echo in every workplace. Middle-aged men and women, loyal employees for decades, are dismissed overnight. At 45 or 47, they are told they are too old to be hired elsewhere, as companies set arbitrary age limits of 35. With no income, they cannot eat. Some rely on the kindness of shopkeepers who quietly slip them food. Others drink cheap liquor to numb their exhaustion, though even alcohol becomes unaffordable. The fatigue is overwhelming. Society itself feels worn down. Small businesses face collapse. Restaurants, supermarkets, and shops, once packed with customers at year's end, now stand empty. The festive rush has vanished, replaced by silence. The economy continues to tighten, and people openly beg for 30 yuan just to buy a meal after going a full day without eating. Hunger forces them to approach strangers with shame and desperation. Elderly residents admit they go months without eating meat. Some have not tasted meat since the Lunar New Year. For them, the cost of even a few cuts of pork is insurmountable. In Chengdu at 4 in the morning, thousands gather in open lots to seek day labor. Work is now called finding a road to live. By dawn, groups of men with hard hats and weathered bags crowd together, hoping to be chosen. Some succeed. Most are left standing as vehicles drive away. Competition turns bitter as workers jostle and argue for even the smallest chance. 1 yuan, one job, one more day alive. Everything is bargained for in the open air. Factories continue to collapse in waves. The post-pandemic landscape is one of shuttered workshops and endless layoffs. On August 29, a video from Guangdong showed a single trash bin rummaged through 3 times within 20 minutes. Online commentators lamented that this is the true reflection of modern China. People no longer fear foreign humiliation, but rather the humiliation of being unable to survive in their own country. Homelessness spreads. Beggars line city streets, changing faces every day as new ones appear. Disabled men hang buckets around their necks, begging for digital payments through QR codes taped to the containers. Elderly women hand over coins but admit they do not know how to scan. The image of high-tech poverty, begging by barcode, is a grotesque paradox of modern China. On city sidewalks, nearly 80-year-old men faint from hunger while still insisting they must work to eat. Others, newly laid off, exhaust their last few hundred yuan chasing non-existent opportunities. At small food stalls, dismissed workers plead to buy the cheapest meal possible with their final 3 yuan. Occasionally, sympathetic owners quietly prepare them a dish, though both sides know such charity cannot last. At dawn, men wait by roadsides, selling themselves for any kind of labor. Some are chosen, most are not. They stand silently as trucks depart, watching the chance of survival slip away. Sleep is scarce, food scarcer still. The strain breaks even the strongest. Yet in this bleak environment, the state continues to pour billions into foreign aid. Last year, Xi Jinping pledged 360 billion yuan over 3 years to Africa, continuing a decades-long policy of buying influence abroad. Critics call it money thrown into the sea while citizens at home starve. Observers warn that this is not generosity but political theater, purchases of loyalty from impoverished regimes willing to echo Beijing's propaganda. The goal is not to help others, but to preserve the image of power while Chinese citizens remain trapped in hardship. Even highly educated graduates, masters and PhD holders, now resort to food delivery work to survive. This is the reality beneath the surface of prosperity. The facade of stability masks widespread despair. Ordinary people struggle daily just to eat, to find shelter, to keep dignity alive. What is promoted abroad as strength is, for countless Chinese families, experienced as relentless decline.
As the world watches closely, China, once hailed as an economic powerhouse, is now sinking into a comprehensive crisis, from economic downturn to social chaos and political instability. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, attempts to conceal the truth with flashy GDP numbers and propaganda campaigns, but the reality exposed from the streets, the collapsing property market, and the halls of power reveals a grim picture. From homeless people sleeping under Shanghai's bridges to the downfall of once glorious Hong Kong, from the shocking behavior of Chinese tourists abroad to the dark secrets inside Zhongnanhai, this is a raw portrait of a nation struggling to survive. Let us peel back the layers of this crisis through the shocking news stories spreading across the country. Poverty and unemployment, wandering lives on the streets. Today, millions of Chinese are trapped in poverty, unable to make it through each day. Crowded streets in major cities like Shanghai and Chengdu are filled with people waiting for jobs from 4 a.m., only to go home empty-handed. A laborer laments, "The daily wage is only 150 to 160 yuan, but how can that be enough when the weather is 37 degrees Celsius, and I have to think twice even about a 1 yuan breakfast?" Thousands flock to job markets carrying big bags and helmets, jostling for slim chances. By 6 a.m., only half find work. The rest wander hungry. In Shanghai, under highway bridges at night, dozens of homeless people, from delivery workers to the unemployed, sleep without shelter. "It's been a long time since I felt full," one says, while others beg for leftovers or a few yuan to buy food for their children. The post-pandemic downturn and waves of natural disasters have shut down factories nationwide, pushing people to the edge of survival. Viral videos show trash bins in Guangdong being rummaged 3 times within 20 minutes, stark evidence of desperation behind China's prosperity facade. Personal tragedies, from suicide to hopeless sacrifice. Amid this economic storm, personal tragedies multiply like wildfire. A 30-year-old man with severe kidney failure gave up treatment because he was too poor. "All 30 years of my life have been miserable." He is not alone. Many middle-aged workers, like a 47-year-old man laid off for being over 35, roam in vain for jobs. He survives on a gifted pork bun and sighs. "We're exhausted. Everyone is exhausted." In rural areas, elderly villagers live off spring water, while in cities, seniors dance in public squares, 2 painful contrasts of old age. One farmer said bluntly, "When I get sick and weak, I'll drink pesticide." Such words stab the heart, reflecting despair spreading across society. Even begging has modernized. A disabled man wears a QR code for digital donations, sparking suspicion of organized crime. "If you haven't eaten for days, come here," one man offered, but behind such acts lies a chilling fear. "In the next life, I don't even want to be human again." Property collapse, shattered dreams, and panic. Selling China's once mighty property market, long its economic backbone, has collapsed, leaving millions of homebuyers in regret. In Shanghai, more than 160,000 apartments are for sale, their prices dropping from 80,000 yuan per square meter to 65,000, some losing half their value in just a few years. "My hands trembled when I saw the list," a woman confessed. In Shenzhen, a flat once worth 12 million yuan is now only 4 million. In Chengdu, one family owes 3.8 million yuan and has been blacklisted. Nationwide, over 50 ghost cities with empty towers and abandoned villas are covered in weeds. In Jiangsu, one project plunged 95%, from 12,000 yuan per square meter to just 600. Buyers who entered at peak prices have lost everything. A lifetime of work for nothing but an iron cage. Panic selling spreads as the phrase "Shanghai people flee Shanghai" trends online. Not only luxury condos, but even older neighborhoods are decaying, sparking fears they won't last another 30 years. The causes: reckless overdevelopment, oversupply, and a total collapse of trust. Experts warn mortgages are now the beginning of personal tragedy, while those born between 1988 and 1998 are called the unluckiest generation, having sacrificed everything to the bursting property bubble. Hong Kong, from Asia's jewel to a city in decline. Once a financial hub rivaling New York and London, Hong Kong is now caught in Beijing's storm. The 2020 national security law and mainland China's downturn have dragged the city into crisis. unpaid wages worth tens of millions, and waves of restaurant bankruptcies. This year alone, 13 major chains collapsed, with 2,234 eateries closing compared to only 1,797 opening. A shocking example, Ocean Empire Kanji abruptly shut down, leaving nearly 100 workers demanding 15 million Hong Kong dollars in back pay. Workers did multiple jobs, cashier, dishwasher, yet lost employment overnight. Construction is also in chaos, nearly 200 wage default cases affecting 2,000 workers, totaling 300 million Hong Kong dollars. On social media, residents rage, Hong Kong is no different from the mainland now, where rule of law is dead. The middle class is emigrating en masse, replaced by new Hong Kongers, over 90% with party ties. The chilling phrase, "keep Hong Kong, but not Hong Kongers," sends shivers through locals. Analyst David Webb warned, after 2047, will we study Hong Kong law or Chinese law? The prosperity once born from freedom has vanished, replaced by one country, one trap. Social policies, hiring retirees and cutting wages. New mandatory social insurance rules worsen the situation, pushing companies to crisis and workers to despair. McDonald's and chains like Little Sheep Hot Pot now hire retirees to avoid insurance costs, offering just 3,920 yuan per month on alternate days. Middle-aged workers are now the stars, one joked. But behind the humor lies tragedy. People in their 40s and 50s, burdened with families, are shut out. Youth unemployment for ages 16 to 24 officially stands at 17.8%, though the reality is worse. A 37-year-old woman said, "After 35, job hunting is like smashing into a wall." Gender bias deepens. Unmarried women are rejected for fear of maternity leave. Firms dodge rules by labeling staff partners or slashing wages from 3,500 to 2,000 yuan, even 1,500. One restaurant owner closed after 7 years. No choice but to cut my losses. These policies, disguised as protection, are in fact squeezing workers, while the state spends 36 billion yuan on military parades and 2 billion on SCO aid. Citizens fume. We're struggling to survive, yet they waste our tax money on vanity. Political instability. Arrests of officials and Zhongnanhai in turmoil. Inside Zhongnanhai, chaos reigns as senior officials are arrested. Former Navy Chief of Staff Li Hanjun was stripped of NPC delegate status for serious violations of discipline. This came amid purges after the downfall of Miao Hua and He Dong, Xi Jinping's allies. Scholar Yuan Hongbing noted, Miao exposed a list of officers, causing panic in the military. This is only the tip of the iceberg of internal turmoil, where power is shaking. People's Daily suddenly published a column on democratic politics, reminiscent of liberal times, signaling disorder. The CCP tries to hide the truth, but leaks reveal it. 360 billion yuan in aid to Africa over 3 years, while its own citizens are jobless. Commentator Huang Ziying slammed, "The economy is collapsing. Graduates are delivering takeout, yet the regime spends big overseas. This is selling out the nation." The CCP's secrets and an uncertain future. Today's China is a full-blown tragedy, an economy crippled by property collapse and soaring unemployment, a society racked with poverty, migration, and personal despair, a politics torn by purges, superstition, and secrecy. The CCP clings to its prosperity image with fake statistics and foreign aid, but the truth is laid bare in viral videos and cries for help from the streets. From the homeless under bridges to elites fleeing abroad, from Hong Kong's decline to CCP outposts in America, all point to a crumbling system. The question remains, can China recover, or is this the beginning of a larger collapse? Watch closely and share your thoughts. The truth cannot stay hidden forever.